Ral sir, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Sir, can we start program?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Asmi ma'am, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Please start the session.
Sure, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm Asmi Jain, and it's truly an honor to serve as today's program coordinator. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to today's session of the FDP on Advanced Tools and Techniques for Research Methodology, where we have the privilege of learning from the immensely knowledgeable Dr. Krunal Soni, sir. This event has been thoughtfully organized by the Research Foundation of India in collaboration with Shodh Malwa, Payal University, Gujarat, Eklavya University, JHRF, ARGA, and Edu Academic Inc. Now, let me introduce our today's expert, Dr. Krunal Soni, sir. Sir is an associate professor of finance and accounting at School of Management, GSFC University. He is having a total of 10 years of experience in academics and 2.5 years of industrial experience. His qualifications include BBA and MBA in Finance, Gujarat SET in Management, PhD in Management, a diploma in Foreign Exchange and Risk Management, a postgraduate diploma in Research and Methodology, and a BCom in Accounting and Taxation. Sir is having a total of 26 publications in various reputable journals like Scopus, ABDC, UGC CARE, Web of Science, etc., including a patent in Government of India for which he had received the loyalty grant for his innovation in finance. Sir has also received 3 Best Research Paper awards in various international conferences. He was also a PhD guide since 2022 in the Veer Narmad South Gujarat University. With this, I invite Sir to take over the session. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Just confirm the screen sharing. I hope it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So good evening, all. On the last second day of this faculty development program. So today we have to understand, how to write a research paper report, and we have to understand the impact factor, right? So how to write research paper report and impact factor is very, very important. So firstly, the research paper report writing is a scientific tool that we must have to adopt in a proper way. And secondly, your prompt and accurate research paper writing will consist for the publications in the good quality journals, right? So again, when we are talking about the good quality journals, we must have to check the impact factors and the various parameters to identify the journals where we need to publish the paper. So today we will also have a glimpse of how to identify the good journals and how to check the impact factor, and and how to find the validity of the journal as far as the paper publication is concerned, because we must have to take those parameters into consideration. Because sometimes what happens is scholars are writing a paper, they are making tremendous efforts for drafting a paper. They have gone through all the parameters of the paper, but sometimes as far as the publication is concerned, the identification, the choice is the first one where where I need to publish my paper, in terms of the quality ratings of each journal. And secondly, once we have decided that we have to go into and we want to go into this particular journal, then again we need to see to it that the quality and the authenticity of the journal, whether this journal is authentic or not. Because many times people have been cheated in the market, they have been copying or their papers into wrong journals at the wrong places. So these are ifs and buts, as far as the research paper writing and drafting is concerned. So these are the parameters that we must have to take into consideration. So today's presentation will focus upon completely on these parameters. So firstly, we will discuss how to draft a paper, and if we are drafting a paper, then what are the parameters that we must have to take into consideration. So the first is research idea generation. So what is research idea generation that we need to understand first? So research idea always comes from the the observations that we have it into the market. sometimes the people who is joining their academic journey for the first time, or even sometimes the research scholar who have admitted their or who have just enrolled themselves for the PhD degree, right? So they usually have this particular question that what should be my title, and if even if they have to go for the presentation as far as their admission is concerned, so they have to decide their titles. And sometimes you might have noted that when you have decided your title, right? So this is called gap. Again, this is called gap, in as far as deciding your title of the research. So when you have decided the title at the time of taking the admission in PhD, and gradually we move on to the process of finishing our PhD. So in that case, we have to go for the various process in terms of through literature review, designing the questions, defining the variables, collecting the data, evaluations of the data, interpretation of the data. So there are so many processes, that we have undergone during this particular process. And during this process, we must have noted, that, sometimes we feel it that, the exact title that we have defined, we are unable to process, the exact title that we have defined, because we don't have, or whenever we were deciding our title, we didn't have the proper market observation. We didn't have the proper market observations in terms of, what is going on into the market, what sort of problems can be solved into the market, what is the existing problem is there in the market, and if the problem is there, then is the data is available? If available, then how? Or even the problem is qualitative or quantitative. If quantitative is there, then data needs to be there, and if the data is available or not. If qualitative data problem is there, so who will be the right person to answer those particular problems so that it can be solved, right? So this is where the research idea comes into the mind, because when we observe the problems into the market, we have to define in terms of what exactly the research has been done in this particular topic, and what are the outcomes, and still what are the challenges which is prevailing into the market. So the difference between these two aspects is called research gap. So actually we need to fulfill those gaps into the market. So this is called research gap that we need to identify. So this is called research idea generation. So when you observe some problems into the market, and with the consideration of the observations of these problems into the market, you must have the critical literature review on this particular topic into the market. And out of this topic, you have certain observation that what has been done and what can be done, right? So what has been done and what can be done. So the gap between these two aspects is called what I can say is research idea generation, right? So this is called problem identification. That is where we would be able to provide the right kind of problems to the market, right? So this is where the research idea generation, we need to generate the ideas, and through which we need to produce to the market. So when we talks about the research idea generation process, so this is the usual chain of research which we have to follow. So research always comes from the idea, as I already mentioned, through the market observation. Based on the idea, you must undergo with the, your own observation in terms of asking few peoples. But in literature, in research, we call it as a literature review, because majorly our research is happening on piece of paper in social science. But although if you are in medical science, chemical industry, where the formula based research and applicability based research is also happening, but again those research has also been noted on piece of paper, and these papers will give you an idea that which sort of equations are working for particular solutions of the chemical. So again, literature review is the backbone for every research. If at all you are looking for your research paper drafting in a proper manner and into the scientific manner, so this is the backbone to identify where is the problem, how to solve the problem, and if the problem is still existing, what are the variables, what are the way outs that we can propose to the society, so that the problems can be sorted out. So through the literature review, we can do this particular process. So once we are doing this literature review, right, so that is where we would be able to identify the theoretical formulations of the research problem, right? So based on research idea and literature review, so research idea means you were planning to do this, and literature review is the reality check of the research idea that you have thought about to do the research into the market. So based on research idea that you have it, and what based on the literature review that you have done it, so what has been done in the past and what you are expecting in this particular topic. So that's where you will find out the thin line of difference, a thin line of gap. And this gap is nothing but the theoretical research problem. This is called research gap. And this gap can be either from the location perspective, either from the opinion perspective, either from the variable perspective, right? So in any parameters, in any sort of things, you can provide something new to the society, and that is where you would be able to justify your research on the ground of managerial implication and societal implication, right? So because whenever you are targeting good quality journals like Scopus, APTC, Web of Science, so these two criteria are very, very important, that you must have to establish the societal importance and managerial implications. If your research is failed to do so, I think the acceptance chances of your paper is also going to be very, very tough. So we must have to be ready with the, at this stage only, that we would be able to provide after the conclusion that what is the managerial implication and societal implications if any author in the future is going to refer this particular paper, right? So this is called theoretical formulations of the research problem. So based on this research problem, you need to frame the research questions. And those research questions can be based on literature review and your own observation. And those questions you need to draft in terms of proper format, in terms of proper variables. And these questions would be the backbone for all the previous process that you have done it. So at this stage, you must have to draft your questions in a scientific manner. And at this junction, every researchers are advised to finalize those questions, with the consideration of pilot study, right? I hope you all are aware about the pilot study, right? That people are understanding or people are assuming those factors in a right manner, or if those factors are really going to matter for the person to whom you are connecting as a part of the respondent to justify your research, right? So is the problem is general or is the problem is specific? If specific, is people is understanding jargons, language, the way you have drafted your questions, or they might be misunderstood those questions, so all these things you need to do it through the pilot study, with the consideration that you will have to collect certain amount of data, and those data needs to be conceptualized, right? So that is where you must have to decide the empirical research questions, and based on empirical research questions, you have to design your research in a manner like, how you are going to collect this data. If you are trying to collect the data through primary research, then who would be your target respondent to answer those questions? Is your questions as sufficient to answer? Does your questions are lengthy? If yes, then what should be the ideal size? Does the person is understanding your questionnaire in a proper manner, or in a, does your objective is getting served as far as the questions you are giving to the respondent, right? So all those plannings we need to do. So that is where you need to decide the sampling techniques and research design, right? Which type of samples you are going to, collect from the respondent. Like, if you are going for primary study, so are you going to collect the responses from any random person as a part of your topic, or your topic required certain experienced person to answer those questions, right? So both kinds of possibilities are there, but it depends upon which kind of research design and sampling techniques you need to incorporate. It depends upon the theoretical problem that you have identified at the stage of literature review, right? If your problem is very specific to particular person, so you must have to collect the responses from the person who is having knowledge, specific knowledge. But if your problem is generalized and any layman person can answer your questions, so you can go for random sampling. But if you need to go for, some particular people, so you need to go for, non-probabilistic convenience sampling, right? So that is called convenience samplings that you need to derive. And if it is secondary data, so secondary data, if your problem is specific, then you need to take out snowball sampling. But if you are free to take any sort of variables as a part of, performance evaluation in terms of financial parameters, or any sort of parameters where you are going to use the second-hand data, so then you can use, the random samplings, so all those things is possible. So this is how you need to design research. Then you need to go for data collection. So data collection, as we have already discussed, based on your research design and sampling techniques, you have certain data in your hands, and this data could be either primary data or it could be secondary data, right? So depending upon the types of data which is required to you, you need to go for data collection, right? So data collection is completely based on the theoretical research problem and research questions that you have, formulated as a part of research, right? So, and through which you will go for data collection. Once your data has been collected, you need to go for the analysis of the data. So this analysis, you can do it for any sort of questions, any sort of parameters, but right kind of applications of analytical tools can be very, very important. As I already mentioned, and I always mention in my all the session, that software doesn't have a mind. Software knows the process. They don't know the parameters, right? So if any sort of data that you will inject into the software, they might, generate the results. But does this result is really matters to you? That's a question, right? If I'm taking the responses like, heights of the people, and if I'm taking the average of the heights, then it does matters for me. But if I'm taking multiple responses in terms of dichotomous question, and if I'm taking the mean of this particular data, so although the software will generate the mean for me, but does this mean is really mean for me? That's a question, right? So which sort of analytical tools, which sort of analytical parameters that we need to utilize as a part of data analysis is very, very important, to execute as a part of this. Otherwise, it would be, no use of this particular analysis. And ultimately, you are deviating from, ultimately the actual research problem and the objective that you have defined. And finally, as a researcher, you would be failed to answer all those questions that you have defined in a proper way, right? So that is where, data analysis needs to be done with very proper care. And once the data analysis has been done, you would be able to answer those questions in a proper manner, right? So if your data analysis is done, you are in a position to answer those questions in a proper manner. And once the analysis has been done, you need to interpret those results, right? So theoretically, you need to interpret the results means whatever analysis you have done it, so here at this stage, you have done the data analysis, and data analysis, you have done it from based on data collection. Data collection, you have done based on all the sampling techniques and research design. Research design and all such things you have decided based on the theoretical empirical questions is nothing but what I can say is objectives. Objectives you have framed based on theoretical problem that is called research gap. And this research gap you have decided based on previous literature review. And this gap can be defined by the combination of two aspects. One is the literature review, and the second one is the research idea on which you want to do the research, right? So this is called gap, right? So this is how analysis has been done and through which you are giving the answer for this question. So ultimately, this question is nothing but, the answering those questions means your objective needs to be served, right, at every point of time. Otherwise, the research has no meaning and no importance, right? And that is where theoretical interpretations of the results needs to be done to justify those things. And based on this, you have to compare your research with earlier. So here you have done the literature review. So based on literature review, you have defined the problem. And out of this problem, whatever results that you have derived, that you need to compare with the previous authors. And that is where the difference of results, difference of perception, difference of opinion, difference of impact needs to be measured and needs to be, draft on the piece of paper. And finally, we have to conclude our research on this particular aspect. So that is where the conclusion is that, so that the previous researcher has done this, I have done this, and this is the point of difference that I have noted in my particular research, right? So this is how we need to process, and this is how we need to incorporate. Yeah, so this is called research process that we need to undergo. So this is the the basic body of drafting a research paper. So research always followed with abstract and keywords. So this is common things. But as far as chapterizations are concerned, so this is introduction, literature review, research methodology, data analysis and interpretation, findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Now, these are the usual body of research paper when you are drafting. Although these parameters may differentiate, may differ depending upon the journal to journal to whom you are targeting or to whom you are aiming for, right? I'm not saying that the heads of this particular things needs to be, same. This could be different, but almost nearest to that, this is similar. Right, so that is where introduction, literature review, research methodology, data analysis and interpretation, findings and conclusion, and recommendation. Right, now the question is, what should we write in introduction and LR? Can anybody answer me? What should we write if I'm sitting for writing introduction? how to chapterize those things, how you are making those chapterization. Anything that you keep in mind, when you are drafting introduction, or any person who wants to share his or her topic so that we can make it, as a part of example and we will sort it out. Yeah, any answers? How we can draft the introduction? What should be the part of introduction when we are drafting introduction in research paper or research report? What should be the part of it? What parameters needs to be considered? Any topic or example anybody wants to quote, then also we can run out on this part. Hello. Yes.
Like suppose we are writing on Dalit literature.
Sorry, can you repeat your question topic, madam?
Suppose if we are writing on Dalit literature.
Firstly, we are writing
On Dalit literature.
like what you call it as a generic literature.
Dalit literature, sir.
Okay. See, when we talks about introduction and literature review, right? So firstly, we talks about introduction. So introduction, you always needs to get the things from the title. What is the title of your topic, right? Out of the title, you might get certain variables on the topic which you are writing the paper. Let's say if I'm writing a paper on, unveiling factors from, green loan disclosures on the performance of automobile sector, right? So if I have this particular title, then out of this title, on what things should my introduction should be covered? Firstly, I need to see the unveiling factors of green loan disclosures, right? So what is the meaning of green loan disclosure, background history of green loan disclosures, right? So this is how the chapterizations can be done. What are the parameters of green loan, objectives of green loan, benefits of green loan, the countries or the global scenario, local scenario, national scenario. What are the parameters that has been taken up in the green loan disclosure? Which companies, corporates are, having these practices, and what is their success ratio out of it, right? Then on the automobile sector, right? So I need to see the automobile sectors, in terms of EIC model, that is economic, industry, and company. So I start with industry, and then gradually I'll see the effect of this green loan disclosure on the automobile sector, that is industry. And then gradually, if any particular 2-5 companies who is making significant utilization of green loan disclosure, then I'll see this impact of this, green loan disclosures on this particular automobile sector company, right? So this is how I need to go through the process of introduction. Literature review is nothing but, whatever parameters that you have drafted in introduction, on that parameters, you need to review the scenarios of the market, which is called systematic literature review, right? So what previous author has done on this particular topic and these topics. So you have to make a chapterization that, whatever literature review you are doing on the particular topic, you need to justify with particular author's statement. Right. So that is where literature review, but again, which author needs to be take on which topic we need to take. So this is where it is literature review, systematic literature review. Then research methodology. So research methodologies has again various parameters in terms of identification of problem, or which is called research gap, that we have already seen in the previous slide. Right. And it is followed by multiple parameters in terms of, like a sample size, sampling techniques, research design, data collection tools and techniques, data analysis tools and techniques, ethical consideration of the study, limitations of the study, chapterization of the study. So this is a part of methodology. Data analysis and interpretation. So here there is no sub-chapters like, but whatever objective that you have drafted based on research problems and empirical questions, that needs to be analyzed and interpreted at this stage. So that is called data analysis and interpretation. Right. And based on data analysis and interpretation, you have to provide your findings, that what are the major outcomes that you have received on this particular data analysis and interpretation. And based on that, you need to conclude that what people are thinking, what is the opinion of the people, So this is where findings and conclusion needs to be derived. And finally, you have to recommend to the people that, in terms of, as I already mentioned, that in terms of future scope, what people will get it out of this study, in terms of managerial implications. So all such things, that we have to define, right? So this is where introduction, literature, research methodology, data analysis, findings, and recommendation needs to be drafted. So research design basically drafted in two aspects, which is qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative is always in non-numeric. It should be the opinion of the people. It should be the audio visuals of particular scenario, right? It could be only images based on which you have been asked to answer those questions. And quantitative research design is always played in number. So here the number plays the biggest role. You have to show the numerical digits, and based on that, the analysis could be possible, right? So all the financial analysis in terms of secondary data can be possible with the quantitative data. So that is quantitative analysis. Nomothetic means individual based study, and idiographic means group based study, right? Group of people, group of company. So in social science, we are not utilizing that much more. But yes, for qualitative and quantitative, it is a maximum utilized research design for all the researchers. So now we need to understand the difference between qualitative and quantitative research design. So as I already mentioned, that qualitative research is usually deals in qualitative aspect in terms of what people thinks, what people perceived, what people have imagined, right? So if I'm asking you that you see the picture and you can see the 5 images of the person, and just see the body language of the person, and I have been asked that what this body language is signaling to everyone. So if I'm asking to this 30% in the class, so every person have difference of opinion out of this, because what they perceived out of this, so this particular image based on their own experience and knowledge in the past, they might write down their observation. So there is no correct answer and there is no wrong answer. Here the point is how the difference can be similarized, right? So qualitative data analysis usually deals with the similarity index. Let's say if I have asked the 30 people observation, so out of this observation, what are the 2-3 similarities or more than 3 similarities which I have noted in majority of the observer? So this could be the result of qualitative analysis. While quantitative is always plays in number, it always works on formula. So here the answers are very logical in terms of the objective that we have derived. And at the same time, when we have to conclude our research, at that time also the quantitative research plays a significant role in terms of quantity, numbers, and the things which we have to define in a very specific language and in specific answer, right? So quantitative research is always deals in number and logical. So qualitative research is a range of activities for exploratory design to means of completing explanation. It assumes that people have meaningful actions or experiences that can be interpreted, right? So every person has their own observation and own thinking. So based on the observation and thinking, we can make the interpretation of this. So areas of data collection for qualitative research. So you can collect the data from economical magazines or economical friend, or even you can refer the articles and blogs, right? It should be flexible, like qualitative data cannot be restricted up to any level and any segments. It can be gettable from any mode, right? So there is no monotonous way out to collect the data. Even you can ask the researcher to observe the patterns of the person or passenger who is moving on the road. So the process is very flexible, and that's why it opens the door to why and how. If we are asking anyone, then we must have to define why and how parameters to answer the questions that we are trying to collect the data. And that's why it is a richness of data, and best to start with if you are starting for the first time as a part of your research journey. You can always rely on the qualitative data on the better front, because you don't have to deal with any scientific formula. Whatever your observations is, or even you can go for critical evaluation, critical thinking of past 15 or 20 researcher who has done the research on this particular topic, and you can critically evaluate the results out of it, right? So that is where it is best to start with your research journey. So that is where it is qualitative research. Quantitative research in terms of survey. So quantitative research usually deals with the primary data collections. So this kind of research is always a first-hand data, although quantitative data research can be in secondary data, where we are collecting the numerical data from various companies' websites, reports, surveys, or any mode through which we are getting any sort of data into the numbers. Right. So again, it is a quantitative research, but if we are going for survey, so these are the various modes of survey through which the researchers can collect the data. So that is called survey methods, through telephone, through personal interviews, through mail, through any electronic mediums through which they can go for it and collect the data, right? So this is how it is: quantitative research through survey. So here is a difference point between qualitative and quantitative research. So in terms of characteristics of objectives, so qualitative research deals with new ideas, insights, and feelings, while quantitative deals with validation of facts in terms of numbers, estimates, and relationship, right? So here we are estimating anything like, I have already mentioned that if I'm collecting the data for, the people's age, so if I want to get the mean age of this particular observer, I can get it, but this is not possible in terms of qualitative data. Type of research in terms of qualitative is usually exploratory. So here we are trying to explore the reasons, fundamentals, and theories, right, in terms of why and how. So that is why it is usually exploratory. We are exploring the things. And quantitative is not exploring the things, but it always a descriptive, detailed explanation in terms of number. And sometimes it is causal, that is cause and effect relations, right? So you have multiple data on multiple parameters. So you want to check the impact of certain parameters on the other parameters. So if we are going for this kind of results, then we are following the causal effect. So cause and effect, if I'm changing the data or numbers in one particular variable, then what is the effect or impact which is transferring on the other variable, right? So this is where it is called descriptive and causal. Type of questions. So in qualitative, it is mostly open-ended, because you cannot bound the researchers to answer in particular category, because here the free birds needs to give, because people usually give the data in terms of their opinion, and usually it is open-ended, semi-structured, or might be it is unstructured, or sometimes it is probing. That means open-ended sharing of the feelings. While in quantitative, here we have to collect the data in terms of the genre of the data which we are looking for, in terms of various categories of data, like nominal data, ordinal data, scale data, right? So here the questionnaires cannot be open-ended or semi-structured. Mostly it is structured so that the data can be collected in a manner, in a fashion where we have to collect it, right? So here it is mostly structured. So that is what the comparison of qualitative and quantitative research. So here is a classification of research design that we are looking for. So exploratory, we have already described about the, and conclusive means exploratory is for qualitative research, and conclusive research is for quantitative, where we have to conclude in terms of numbers. And out of this conclusive, there are two types of things. Descriptive, we want to describe that, what is the numbers, what is the average on all this. So this is describing, where we were not aware about such things. So descriptive research, again, it has been divided into two parts. So it is cross-sectional research design and longitudinal. If we are going for primary research in terms of descriptive, right? So, and we are collecting the data from multiple respondent from diverse location at the same period of time. Let's say if I'm conducting one survey and I had decided that I want to collect the data from 3 months time period. So this 3 months time period is applicable to all the area, whether I'm collecting data from Indore, Bhopal, Jabalpur, wherever it is, right? So from multiple locations, I'm collecting the same kind of data. Questionnaire is same. Target audience category is same, right? So that is called cross-sectional. At a single point of time, I'm collecting the data from multiple respondent, and out of this data, I want to evaluate that. I want to describe that, what is their opinion, what is their perception, right? So that is where my research design could be descriptive cross-sectional, right? And at the same time, if I want to check the impact of certain variable on other variable, so here based on that data only, but the data could be numeric and numbers, I can see the impact of one particular variable on the other variable. So that is called longitudinal research design, which is called historical data, right? So historical data is always on numerical. So if in historical data, if I'm not checking the impact of one variable on other variable, but if I'm checking, the difference of performance in multiple companies, so it is longitudinal because it is on historical data. But if I want to check the impact of one particular variable on other variable, whether it is primary data or secondary data, so it is called causal research, right? So this is where I'm checking cause and effect relations. So here is the research design mechanism. So whenever you are drafting a paper and you are looking for research design chapter, so these are the topics that we usually have to cover. That is statement of problem, reviews of previous study, if any certain particular observation, scope of study, what you are trying to do in terms of areas, variables, objectives that you have finalized based on the problems, based on objectives, hypothesis needs to be framed, definitions of certain concept. If there are some certain technical terms, then we have to provide significance of the study, how the society is going to be beneficial out of this particular study. Geographical areas needs to be defined, how this area have been covered, right? Sampling plans, we have already discussed in a lot manner. Tools for gathering data, how you are going to collect the data, and chapterization schemes that we need to see how the, different chapters needs to be executed and answered. So we have already discussed this statement of problem. So it is actually describe, why, what, so these are the various questions that you need to ask so that the research problems needs to be drafted. Scope, I have already defined in terms of locations, in terms of, variables that you need to plan to cover. Objectives based on, research problems, you need to draft the objective. For every particular problem, you need to draft a question, right? And this objective can be exploratory, right? So we have already decided why it is exploratory when we are going for qualitative. And usually we are exploring something new. So that is where exploratory, which usually have why and how. Descriptive, we are trying to describe in terms of why. And causal means here we are trying to see the cause and effect relations, which is always experimental. Usually in medical science it is, and so this is if one particular drug has been defined. So what are the chemicals we need to use? How much level of chemical needs to be used so that it can be effective to the human bodies, right? So, and these experiments needs to be done on various animals. So this is cause and effect. It cannot be say that, in the first instance itself, it is going to be effective, right? So there are multiple trials needs to be executed. So this is where it is cause and effect relations, which is called causal research. Hypothesis, whatever research you have defined, objectives you have defined, based on that, hypothesis needs to be defined, and hypothesis can be clarified in null and alternate hypothesis. And the acceptance criteria for null and alternative is if the p-values are getting greater than 0.05, your null hypothesis got accepted, and if the p-values are less than 0.05, you have to reject the null hypothesis and you have to accept the alternate hypothesis. Significance of the study, here we have to define the importance of the study, why we are doing it, how we are doing it, how it is going to be contribute to the society, and which particular community of the society is going to be beneficial out of it, right? So this is where it is significance of the study, and we also need to include the explanations of the work's importance as well as its potential benefits and techniques to write significance. So you have to start from general contribution of the research, and then every segment wise contribution needs to be defined, and finally we have to conclude that which particular group of people is going to be beneficial out of this particular study. So that is where we have to finalize the significance of the study. Geographical areas, we have to define, just like I have told you, if you are collecting data from multiple locations, like, from Indore, Bhopal, Jabalpur. So this is called geographical location, right? So human geographical, physical geography, regional geography, and integrated geography, multiple factors. So all those things needs to be properly execute and mention. Sampling plan, depending upon the objectives that we have it, either you need it experienced person to answer this question, then you cannot go for random. But if you can ask to any person to answer those questions, because your research is defining the random opinion, right? So that is where the random sampling needs to be executed, right? So depending upon the objectives and the problems that we have defined, the sampling plan is going to be finalized, right? So here we have to define the sampling plan also. Tools to gather the data, we have already gone through it. Apart from this, there are a lot many other tools are there so that we can always see to it. Types of data is very, very important: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. So nominal data means when you have a categorical data, like, if I'm asking someone that what is your gender, so gender answer could be male and female, right? So it's a category, right? But again, we have to see that, that particular category needs some sequence. Let's say if I'm asking someone that what is your gender, so the categories of to answer is male or female. So the person could be either male or female. At the same time, if I'm asking someone what is your educational qualification, so it could be graduation, it could be post graduation, it could be doctorate, it could be professional degree, right? So again, this is category for educational background. So in this particular question, we need to see that does the categories require some sequence? If yes, then it is ordinal data. If no, if categories does not require any sequence, then it is nominal data. Right. So if I'm asking someone, what is your gender? So gender has two options. One is male and another one is female. So is it necessary that any person needs to put male to be first and female to be second? Right. Or, specific, what I can say is specific numbering is required. So I think it is no. Right. So for gender, the person is free to put male to be first or female to be first. So there is no category sequence is required. So here it is no sequencing are required. So that is where it is nominal data. While in ordinal data, let's say if I'm asking someone, that in a Likert scale, are you agree with me or not? Right. So this agreement can be on particular statement can be, from Likert scale to strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree. So the person who is answering this question is expecting that either you start from, ascending order or either you start from descending order, but it should be in order. So that is where it is called ordinal scale data. And third one is if the order and the number data, it should be in specific interval. Let's say if I'm starting the grading of the student, so it always starts from 0 point. So the 0 to 10, 10 to 11 to 20, 21 to 30. So the scale I have already defined, categories I have already defined, the group I have already defined, but these group are on equal distance. So these are interval data, and ratio data is pure number. Let's say if I'm asking someone, what is your heights? So person say 5 feet 6 inches. What is your weight? The person say 70. So it is pure number, just like stock prices data. So this is where it is ratio and scale data. So this is how the variables of the study needs to be choose. Either it could be dependent variable, it could be independent variable. So independent, dependent variable are very clear. In regression analysis, the independent variables are X and dependent variables are Y. Categorical variables, we have already seen it, like gender, male and female. So male and female are categories. Continuous variable, again, I have told you in Likert scale, strongly disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. It is continuous variable. Nowhere the sequence can be break. Quantitative variables, so which is in number, it is quantitative, and the things which is not in number, like speech, opinion, images, so these are qualitative variables, right? So which cannot be measured in numbers, right? So this is how the variables needs to be defined. Data analysis tools and techniques. So these are the various data analysis tools and techniques that we can incorporate in our research paper writing and report writing. So we can go for frequency analysis if the data demands, the total number of particular category wise. So we can go for it. Descriptive in terms of mean, median, and mode. I have already explained that descriptive analysis can only be possible with the quantitative data, quantitative variables. For qualitative, it is not possible. And again, for quantitative, we need to go for specific categories of data. Like, I have told you that for dichotomous data in terms of yes and no cannot be possible. But for the nominal and ordinal scale data, right, so it is possible. So here we have to see this. And I have already told you that software doesn't have a mind. Software have a formula, right? So everything and anything, if you inject into software, they will run it. But does it require to run it? And does this results makes a sense for analyst? So that is where your research makes a sense to the public. So that is where we as a researcher needs to take those decisions very wisely. Chi-square is for categorical variable in terms of nominal and ordinal scale data, which is measuring the association between the different variables that we are taking for our analysis. To check the impact measurement, so for that we have to go for parametric and non-parametric test. So parametric test in terms of one variable, we can go for one sample t-test. For two variables, we can go for independent sample t-test. For more than two variables, we can go for ANOVA test. And if the data does not turns to be normal, right? So the non-parametric versions needs to be applicable for all the parametric tests that we have discussed. So the non-parametric version of independent sample t-test is Mann-Whitney U-test, ANOVA test is Kruskal-Wallis, and so on. Apart from that, if we want to explore some new theories in terms of factors, so we can go for exploratory factor analysis, which is also called data reduction techniques, means whatever statement or data that you have taken up for your study, if those data are not supporting, so non-supportive data needs to be reduced and cancelled. So that is where it is exploratory. And all those data which you have explored for your study, again, you need to confirm that whether this data is supporting to your study or not. So that is where the confirmatory factor analysis needs to be executed, right? So this is confirmatory factor analysis. And finally, findings and conclusion. And these findings and conclusions should always reflect to the objectives and hypothesis. And objectives and hypothesis should also link with the research problems and titles. So that is where your paper is in scientific manner, your paper is in scientific process, and through which we can accommodate things, right? So that is how it is going to be. Recommendations, you always have to recommend that, what is there out of your study, what is going to be beneficial, where it is applicable, how the society can be beneficial as a whole, right? So this is where you have to recommend to the society. So apart from that, I wanted to cover one more aspect for this particular things, how to identify the right kind of journal for all of us. So, if you're looking for Scopus journal, so you always have to go to Schemago, right? You always have to go to Schemago website. So here you will get all the Scopus journal. So on this Schemago website, you have to click here. And, so here there are different parameters. So if you're looking for any journal rankings, so you can get it the journal ranking from here. You can see this. All sort of journals that you are looking for is available over here, right? So you have to click over here, journal ranking, and it shows all the journals. But again, you need to apply certain filters. Just like, if your subject is very specific, like, I'm from management, so I need to define my subject to be management, or even if I'm not aware about the various subjects, so I can also draft the subject. So you can see this business management and accounting. So the journals of business management and accounting needs to be visible. So before selecting the criteria, you can see the number of journals over here. It is 31,136 listed Scopus journal right now in the Scopus database. And out of that, if I want to see the management journal, so I need to check the management, business management. So 31,136 will be cut down to 4 digits number, I think. Yes, 1717 is the total active journal for the management. And I hope you are aware about the different criteria for the Scopus journal, like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. So this is called, Scopus journal ranking, right? Or you can say Schemago journal ranking, right? So this is start from Q1. And if you want in opposite direction, so you can click over here. So it will start from Q4 also. So here is a Q4. So Q4 journal Scopus are always marking in the red one because it might be activated, it might not be activated. Right, so Scopus journals you always have to check once. But yes, if at all you want to download all this data and want to see that which kind of journal is best suited for you, so this is the basic criteria that even if you download this report, so the same categories and same information you will get it from here. Here you can see this H index 370 Journal of Finance. So this is the highest level of journal which have been recognized by the various researchers and at the same time the readers across the globe, so that is why the H index of Journal of Finance in social science is the highest. You can see the next journal, again it is for the finance only, Journal of Financial Economics, 331 H index. That means minimum 331 articles of this journal have been cited by 331 times each article. That is why this journal is consisting H index to be on this higher note. Right, and that is where you can see this total documents in 2024 that this journal has accepted for the publication is 97, and in 3 years it is 227. Total references out of this journal have been received in 2024 only 5,521 in total, and in 3 years it is through 2,390 total sites, right? And citable documents for this journal is 220 out of 227. Might be 1 or 2, 5 articles have been rejected at the later stage, right? So this is how reference document, and this journal belongs to which country. So this is a country signals which you have seen it. So you can see these major journals are from UK and USA, right? So you can see it over here, and if you want to download this data, you can download it from here. So this is how the quality indexing and impact factors needs to be identified for this journal. And this data, the same data which we have seen over here, if you want to keep it for your records, so this is the journal records which you can keep it for you. So you have to see over here. And you can see this data. So this kind of data will be available to you. So even out of this data, if you want to measure or select the journal, so you can see this. This is the name of the journal. We have seen the name of the journal first to be Journal of Finance. You can see this, right? And this is ISSN number of the journal, H index of this journal. So you can see this total documents in 2024-22, and H index is this much. Documents in 3 years, we have already seen it, and categories of the journal is Q1, right? And this is documents in 1 year, 3 years, total references, right? So all these categories we have already seen. So this is 5,521, 2,321 citable documents we have already seen. 3 years records we have already seen, right? And the areas for which this particular journal is accepting this paper. So this is for econometrics and finance, right? So even if the journal is Q1, but if your area or the scope of research is not matching to the journal, you are unable to submit, or even if you are submitting the paper within 7 days or 1 month, you will get a message from the editor. Sorry that we could not process your article because it does not match with the scope of the journal. So this is how we have to see to it in terms of the scope and areas that this particular journal is accepting. And once the scope is clear, then you need to go into detailed manner in terms of understanding, the type of documents that we need to draft in terms of references, in which format the references needs to be covered up. So all those things we have to decide. Clear? So that is econometrics and finance areas that we need to cover up, right? So Journal of Finance needs to be decided. Clear? Okay. So this is how, we need to identify the journals for our report writing. So once our report writing in basic level is done, then our job is to identify the right kind of journal. And once the journal needs to be identified based on the scope and areas for the publications they are covering, we need to go into author's guidelines, and we need to see that which formalities or which, formats of the papers that they are referring. And according to that, we need to redraft it. And once it is done, we have to submit the paper so that the chances to publish our paper into right kind of journal. But anywhere and any time, whenever you are going for Scopus publication, you always have to come on this platform that is called Schemago, right? Because no journal is coming to you on the WhatsApp that, we will publish your paper, please pay this amount, right? So this practice usually is not happening, if you are understanding or not. Because if you want to go for, let's say if I want to go for this particular journal and I want to check this website, so always go to this Schemago findings, and they will drag you to the journal official website. So that is Journal of Finance. If I'm going into this, you can see the details. And if I want to publish my paper into this journal, I need to go for home page, right? If I'm clicking on this, it will drag me to the official page of journal where I need to submit my paper. So this is the right process through which you can go for it. And here you have to log in and register, right? Here you have to log in and register. So even if you have not logged in, or if you are doing for the first time, you have to log in here. But again, for submitting any sort of Scopus paper, you must have 16 digits ORCID ID. I hope you all have it. The 16-digit ORCID ID is very, very necessity to go for it. So individual login, you have to do it. And then once your login is completed, you need to go for the submission process. Till the time, you won't be able to do any such things. You can see this, even if I want to do the login, it will asking me ORCID ID. So you can see this, and if I'm submitting my ORCID ID, it will drag me to the ORCID ID, and then directly I will be into the journal page. So all the data of mine will be linked to this journals. So they are fetching my data. You can see this, right? So if I'm doing this ORCID ID login, so journal has automatically accepted my credentials, and my all credential has been passed on to this journal. So now I can process, to the submission of my article. My all the datas have been passed on to this journal. I don't have to, give my data every time to the new journal. They will automatically catch from my ORCID ID. You can see this, my name has appeared, and now I have been logged in, right? Even I don't have to do the sign up. If my ORCID ID is there, I can directly go and log in, and now I can submit an article. You can see this. So this is a usual process through which the journal needs to be identified based on scope of the study that we are doing it. How to identify the journal? So you need to go to Schemago, you need to check the quality of journal, impact factors, right? And all these things we have to see to it, right? You can see this. There are some submission fees of this particular journal, and even if you are doing refunds, so refund fees are also there in terms of dollars. So all those things we have to take it in a very seriously before submitting the articles, because if they are doing your reviews, they also have to incur some cost, right? And resubmission policy is also there. And you can see this journal is usually dealing in in a year time period, and see the charges they are applicable, $250, right? So all these things we have to read it very carefully before submitting, right? So that our time should not be wasted, and journal time should also be saved. And most importantly, our paper should be parked at the right place, right time, and we would get the publications for our own promotions, increment, and for our academic credentials, right? So this is how we have to take all those things into very positive manner, and accordingly we need to process. Clear? So this is the basic guidelines, right? And if at all you are going for submissions, you can see this, click here for additional mandatory submission guidelines. So you can go for this guidelines, and even if you are planning to go for this journal, so you can download those guidelines and you can refer at any point of time. You can see these guidelines. So every guidelines are of 4 pages. Just imagine. Yeah. So all these guidelines needs to be strictly adhere, otherwise your paper got rejected, and that is why that we have to see to it. So that's it from my side. I'm making this platform open for question answer. If you have any questions, you can ask. Yeah. Any questions? Any suggestions? Anything you want to ask? Any questions?
So I have a question.
Yes, please, madam.
So not related to this particular session. So in case I am about to appear for the admission for PhD into IITs. So
Hmm.
what are the basic research questions that I should know before appearing for the interview?
All the technicalities of your topic, the topic which you are going to appear, right? So basic topics, fundamentals in terms of which topic you are going to do. Based on that, proper literature review in terms of systematic literature review should be there. And out of this literature review, you should have your gap. And based on this gap, all the other research parameters in terms of data collection, sampling techniques, research design, that you are going to, incorporate in your study on the future aspect, right? And how how your study is going to be differentiate from others. And at least you need to suffice your research on the ground of what is the managerial implications and societal importance once your research is going to be finished. Right? So these are the important technical parameters that every researcher, every selectors at good institutes like IITs and IIMs are focusing upon. And most
Sure.
importantly, cover all those papers which are from the Scopus and Web of Science, rather than going into peer review for your literature review.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir.
So which IIT you are planning, madam?
So IIT Delhi day after tomorrow.
Oh, great. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, any more questions?
From my end, no. I guess it was pretty much clear. Thank you.
Right, right. Thank you. Any opinions, suggestions, any questions, please? Okay, I think so. There is no question. I hope these things is clear to all of you. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining here. And thank you so much for patient listening and giving me the platform. So thank you, RFI team, and all the participants for your patient listening. Thank you, Jain Madam, for coordinating today. Thank you, Ajay sir, and all the RFI team for inviting today and providing me the platform to share my knowledge on this particular topic. Although I'm not well today, but thank you so much, all of you. Still, if you have any, yes, Madam, you have a question.
So you shared about Scopus Index journals. Apart from that, uh, Web of Science also could be one of the platform to.
Yeah, Web of Science is also good.
And apart from that, because today I was having a
ABDC,
session.
ABDC listed journals, ABDC,
Mm,
ABDC,
Yeah.
right? So still, if you have any question, I have posted my number on chat box, so you can always.
Yes, I will. Because and also it's like the area examples which you give because
Yeah,
you're from the management side
you
and
can
I'm
always
from
take
the
yeah,
fine arts background. It's totally different.
right, right, right.
So
So you can take my numbers and you can definitely reach. I'll
thank
guide.
you so thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, all of you. Thank you. Over to you, Madam.
Yes, sir. On behalf of entire Research Foundation of India, a heartfelt thank you to Sir for such an enlightening, engaging, and insightful session. Sir, it was truly enriching and knowledgeable. We hope you get well soon.
Thank
I would
you.
also I would also like to express my gratitude to all the participants for the active participation. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.